90 seconds really goes fast. I wasn't ready for that. Israel told the U.S. that Iran cooked up a new plan to assassinate President Donald Trump. That is according to new reporting from the Wall Street Journal. Earlier this week in Turkey, Trump referred to threats on his life. For years, Iran has vowed retaliation against Trump for the killing of General Soleimani during Trump's first term. Joining me now to discuss, one of the reporters on that story, a dear friend of this show, one of my favorite reporters, Alex Ward, national security reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Laura and Jake and his punch bowl still here. Alex, break this down. What happened?
Yeah, so right now you have Israel presenting intelligence to the United States that, in Israel's assessment, indicates that there is some fresh plot to kill President Trump. Now, one thing we should note is that the U.S. officials who received this aren't exactly, in line with the Israeli assessment here, right? I mean, there's been tons of threats on President Trump's life, not just from Iran for a while, but from Iran for years now. So, how serious this is still a bit of a debate. But you do have some U.S. officials wondering, why would Israel send this intelligence to the U.S.? Now, part of it is because, of course, there's a longstanding intelligence cooperation relationship between the U.S. and Israel. There are others who speculate that Israel is trying to maybe coax President Trump back into major combat operations against Iran. And then there are others who think that, hey, it's just a very, there are some U.S. officials who genuinely did worry about what they saw and rang some alarm. So there's still some aspects of this and context we need to get into. But in terms of what we for sure know, Israel does believe, or at least assesses based on the intel they received, that there is a new, fresh, and somewhat legitimate threat on President Trump's life.
Trump wants out of this war, right? A U.S. official told our network that despite what Alex has just reported, that the U.S. will continue talks with Iran. How much real optimism is there in the White House, Laura, or are they just trying to push this out because in many ways they are backed into a corner? What is the White House telling you?
Every time the White House has talked about this, including senior officials, they always caveat and say that while they're trying to keep negotiations going, while they're trying to keep conversations and those channels open, that ultimately any little thing can knock these negotiations off. And they always add those caveats. And even when I would say they were probably more optimistic when they were announcing this memorandum of understanding in the beginning of these talks, they kept adding those qualifiers. So I think that, yes, even though they are telling us that they want to continue these conversations and negotiations, they are incredibly far from any kind of end deal here. And the president, meanwhile, continues to threaten, strikes continue to be made, and he also is talking about the war in a way as though he's fine if some of his main objectives that he laid out when he announced this war are not met, including that just this week he said that we already got the nuclear dust, that enriched uranium. He said the U.S. already has it because it's so far underground. That's a bit of, expectation setting, one could argue, because of the fact that the president may end up saying, well, we don't need it anymore. Okay,
then two questions. Alex, is there any evidence backing up that we've got the enriched dust? Because remember, when he launched the first strike, it was, they've got a nuclear weapon, it's going to be done in 2 weeks, and they're going to use it. He didn't prove that. His latest claim, A, has he proven it? And B, this ceasefire, do you consider it a turning point or just another bump in a very long road?
Well, in terms of the nuclear dust, you'll be surprised to hear that President Trump doesn't always speak fully and with clarity. I think what he means by we got it is that the enriched uranium is buried under many mounds of rubble after Operation Midnight Hammer last year to destroy the 3 Iranian nuclear sites. And in Trump's estimation, or at least new comments, he's basically saying Iran can't get to it. The only way to get to it would require American or even Chinese excavation equipment. And so, in a sense, Iran has no access to that enriched uranium, which therefore will make it hard for them to make a nuclear weapon. That seems to be what President Trump is saying. And if that is indeed his claim, then it brings into question the whole reason for this war now, because if it is to be that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, then right now they're pretty far from it, especially as President Trump is in office. So what is the rest of this for? And in terms of this ceasefire, I mean, it's a bunch of fires that aren't ceasing. I have continued to say that that basically, this is a war that has just been continuing. The ceasefire is one in name only. They've been doing tit for tat. Now, in the history of warfare, we've seen ceasefires have these skirmishes throughout. But there's really never been like an actual stop to this. There have been some times in which there are no fires, but the war has continued because the aims have not been met, because the forces have not really stood down for extended periods of time. So we can call them ceasefires, we can call them pauses, but this war has been going on since February 28th, and there's no sign that is stopping any immediate time soon.
A bunch of fires that aren't ceasing. I'm definitely stealing that line. Jake, is the cost of this war, is it going to become one of, if not the biggest issue in the midterms? MS Now is reporting that Republicans on the Hill are getting more and more worried that a deal is getting farther and farther away and gas prices could, in fact, soar.
There's two different costs. There's a political cost, which is very high. I mean, you've seen slippage in these war powers resolution votes on the House floor in recent weeks, and Trump has lost them when it comes to limiting his ability to prosecute wars in the Middle East. There's that cost. There's also the cost that the Pentagon has asked for $67 billion in fresh money now, like not in the future. Now they want it. And Trump has said, actually, I want $350 billion. That's a monetary cost, which I think it's going to, that the Congress, when they return next week, is going to have to begin to continue to seriously grapple with. I think that's going to become very, very difficult. Voting for that supplemental spending bill is going to be seen as a proxy vote for this war. Period. The end. That's not something that a lot of Republicans, certainly no Democrats, but a lot of Republicans are not going to want to be involved in that.
Okay. And you know who a lot of those Republicans talk to behind closed doors, off the record? Fox News and Fox News hosts, which is why this quote or this soundbite stuck out to me. A prominent Fox News host called out some of America's negotiators in Iran by name. I think that's noteworthy. Watch this.
I also don't think that Witkoff and Kushner should be the ones doing this. They're business guys. They have not been effective in Ukraine, not been effective in Gaza. They have not been effective in this. They can't have three portfolios to begin with. We have a State Department for a reason.
Okay, Jake, combine that with an anonymous Republican lawmaker who said, what in the world has Trump been doing? Why are things going so poorly? Is there any real plan for how we're going to get out? How's the White House dealing with the questions coming from its own party? This, to me, does feel like somewhat of a wow.
Yeah, and I think the thing here is, Steph, that they never really did the coalition building in the Capitol that they needed to. I mean, this was avoidable. Well, in the Capitol, for sure, they never even really, I mean, they did brief people, I want to be fair, but they never briefed people to the extent they actually needed to bring people on their side and to say, here's what we're doing now, here are the interim steps that are going to need to happen, and here's what we're trying to achieve. Instead, they just did the whole, like, Trump is great, blah, 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 we should be able to beat Iran and overthrow the regime and do all the stuff that we want to do. That's not useful for members. I mean, Trump is not going to face re-election again, but there are dozens of House Republicans this year who are facing an onslaught of Democratic attacks from people who are saying that the president entered an illegal war, is spending your money on a war in Iran instead of on health care. He let subsidies expire. Costs are high. They're getting higher. Gas prices are up and down. That's not a great political argument. Remember, members of Congress are out for themselves. They want to see themselves reelected. Donald Trump is going to be gone in 2 years. They hope not to be. And I think to that end, they want to know what the plan is, and they want some sort of, conclusion, at least in the near term, to be on the horizon.
Well, then perhaps they might want to stop being so bold anonymously and start speaking on the record. Jake, thank you. Laura, thank you. Alex, awesome reporting.